influential people. Names like Jeff Bezos, Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk, Barack Obama may come to mind. These people are known for the impact that they've made on the world, impacts that will stand the test of time. But all of them at some point had to make a choice, whether to lead or to follow, whether or not to disrupt or to conform. And we all know the path they took. They will be remembered as some of history's greatest visionaries and impactors, disruptors. About 14 years ago, I came to a crossroads in my life. I had to make some decisions. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about where it all began. When I was 23 years old, I had my first near-death experience. Those were some tough times. 6 long months before the doctors figured out it was serum hepatitis caused by some dental work I had had. I remember before I even found out what it was, I started to feel better. So I decided I'll go back to work and just jump back into where I left off and do my thing. But when I walked into work, my manager took one look at me, just one look, and she said, I'll never forget these words. Esther, you need to go home. You need to call your doctor and have them test you for jaundice or hepatitis. Those words hit me like a jolt that made me stop and think, made me stop and listen. Now, she was seeing something I couldn't see. I was a shadow of myself. I had been very sick. I had lost a lot of weight. I couldn't see what I looked like, but she did. And it was not just a jolt to my system. It made me realize, wow, I'm sicker than I thought. And I went back to the doctor, and the diagnosis was hepatitis. Well, I emerged from that NDE seeing life as something extraordinary, almost magical, almost mystical. But I didn't understand what it was, so I hid it. I hid what I was feeling, what I was seeing, because I didn't understand. I didn't know how to articulate it. I didn't know how to explain what was happening in me. As time went on, I experienced 2 more NDEs. And still, I'm pretending that this isn't happening to me. I'm pretending that I'm not seeing and knowing what I'm knowing, because I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to fit into a world that was unfamiliar and surreal to me. After the ending, I just didn't see things the same way again. And then about 14 years ago, I remember there was this still, small, quiet voice within me that says, are you ready to trust me now? I thought, that's the voice that's been talking in me all the time. This is that voice that's been telling me to say something. But I was afraid. But that voice that said, that asked that question, are you ready to trust me now? That is the voice that made me stop and look at my life. That voice taught me that it takes courage to step into leadership. It takes courage to step out there and believe and speak what you know. And that's when I began to look at leadership, because I had to take control of my life. And what I learned, true leadership comes from trusting in your own self, trusting in what you know. True leadership is about knowing that when you speak, you're saying who you are and what you stand for. True leadership, you'll find it in every phase of life. You'll find it in families, in business, in society. And you don't have to have a big title. It is your belief, it is your integrity, and it is how you show up that determine what type of leader you're going to be. And from that point, I realized this is what that voice had been trying to tell me. But it wasn't until 14 years. Even with all that, I still didn't make any moves on that. 14 years ago, that's when I knew I was at a crossroad and I had to change some things. That's when I knew that leadership was what I was about. I knew. And I'm going to give you an example. I remember making the decision to leave my marriage. And that was kind of hard. I had 2 children. And I decided I was going to raise my 2 children alone. Because their well-being, their welfare was what was important to me. And I made a commitment. And I didn't call this leadership. I just was committed to my children. I was committed to them having a better life. And I knew where we wasn't going to make it. And I remember having to sit down and talk with them and make a pact with them. Their responsibility was to focus on their schooling, and mine was to make sure that all of their material needs were met. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I knew that I had to make a plan, and that's what I did. I sat down and I made a plan. I was going to teach them how to protect themselves. I was going to train them how to show up in the world. I was going to make sure that they understood what was possible in them. And where all this came from, it was that voice that woke me up. It was guiding me in what I needed to do. And even in that plan, I knew it was going to take resilience. I knew that it was going to take resilience, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it was until I did it, until I went through it, until I saw the effects of my children's life. But I knew that I needed a village to help me raise them. And so I went out and I began to form connections in my community. And I knew that I couldn't stop at just friends and family because they didn't have enough for what I wanted my children to have. So I stepped out into, started working in the local political scene, doing some political work. At the time, I was working as an executive assistant for the transportation company, and that allowed me to connect with a lot of influential figures in Seattle. And then that moment came when they approached me to work on a campaign for the first black man running for mayor in Seattle, Norm Rice. And I was so excited that they had chosen me. I was so excited. But I had been doing the work and I didn't know it. I had been showing what resilience looked like. I had been out there leading and didn't even understand. Now, the battle was uphill because everything was stacked against us. There was only 12% black people in Seattle. So it was going to be an uphill battle. But I said yes. I accepted the challenge. I accepted that challenge. And I remember working my butt off. I did grassroots. I created the Women for Rice initiative. And I remember rallying support for this campaign. And against all odds, we did something impossible. They didn't think it could happen, but he won. He won. And it wasn't just a victory. It wasn't just a victory for him. We were setting precedent for future generations. We were showing other little black kids that this could be done, especially in the Northwest, because in the whole state, it's only 4%. So we were doing something big. And that showed me, that helped me to understand about making choices. My power was in the choices that I was making. Every choice you make, every choice should lead you to something greater. And unlike me, pay attention. Because I was just doing things. I thought everybody could do what I was doing. I thought this is the way the world was. But I found out it wasn't. I found out that's not what was happening. Every choice. So I want you to ask yourself a question. When is the last time you made a choice for yourself, not based on what other people expect of you? When was the last time? Because a lot of the choices I was making was based on what other people were expecting. They knew I could do it. I didn't know, but they knew. And so I was making my choices based on that. But that taught me how important conscious choice is. When you make a choice, think about the end. Where are you trying to go? What is the outcome you want before you make that choice? So you know, because where you begin is how you're going to end up. But we make choices unconsciously. Most of us operate automatically. You get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, take your shower, eat your food, get your coffee, get in the car, go to work, every day doing the same thing, making unconscious choices. So that made me think. When we came through that, I began to realize, think about what you're doing. Put a clear roadmap out there. When you step into leadership, know, I didn't know that I was leading. I didn't know. Think about it. When challenges happen, are you going to step up and lead or let someone else? I want you to think about that. Those type of choices help you to build a legacy that's going to not only be great, but one that's going to have meaning, one that's going to really showcase your life. So think about today. Ask yourself a question. What is one thing you can do today in your life that's going to create your legacy? And while you're thinking about those choices, will that choice bring you closer to your truth, or is the weight of others' expectation weighing you down? I had to think about my journey. And on my journey, I learned a truth that is so important to me. What other people think of me is none of my business. I learned to focus on who I am and my power and strength, to stand in my truth and live my life fully, authentically. And along the way, I learned another truth, to love myself unconditionally, unapologetically, because self-love, you have to have it before you can become a leader. And when I'm speaking of self-love, don't get it twisted. I am not talking about narcissism, okay? I'm talking about true love. Some people get that confused, but seriously, if you're going to be a leader that's going to make decisions from a conscious place, from a place where people will understand with compassion and love, you've got to be conscious in your choices. You've got to think through this. Okay? The world is looking for leaders that make conscious choices, from a place of compassion and love and living authentically. Are you going to be one of them?
Yes.
Good, because the world is in need of your light now. Thank you.